Hi Thrive Tribers, I hope you are going well on this lovely, beautiful, sunny Monday. Not too hot anymore, which is very nice, though temperatures are going to go up next week. I'm now a weather person as well. Thank you for joining me for today. I thought that I'd run this today. I know it's a public holiday, but sometimes that means we've got a bit more time and you might be able to hop on and to participate in this session. And to be part of that today. Otherwise, you can watch it at your leisure. But all in all, I thought keep the momentum going. I said I was going to be here, so here I am. Today, we're going to be working on a scenario which is based on a real life situation. So this relates to a mediation that I conducted many moons ago. And fortunately it was a successful mediation and it had long-term stickiness, which means that the parties were able to return to work and to actually function and work together really well going forward. So that's really good. And it's a situation where, again, it's like a perfect storm, where a number of factors had resulted in an incident happening, but an outsider looking in could have told you that this was potentially going to happen anyway. So I want to give you a bit of background and a bit of structure as to the scenario today. But what we're talking about is a situation where the perfect storm, the dispute, happened in front of the clients, which is always unfortunate, but sometimes this does happen. Now, this client group were actually a group of young people, and some of them were disabled. So they were very much taken by surprise, and it was a very difficult situation in the moment because they needed to also be supervised. There was an expectation of that. So let's go back a little bit and have a look at the story and the scenario of what was going on. So this is an organisation which does good deeds, and part of what it does is provide some training to young people. And this part of the business has a CEO who I have to say was loved by absolutely everybody. She had enormous respect from everybody in the team. We've then got an operations manager, and this again, the operations manager had a lot of respect and is considered a good leader by the rest of the team. We then had a team leader, who I'm going to call Bob, not his real name, who didn't have such a great relationship with Alex, but did have a reasonable relationship with Sam. So we have a team leader here, and then these are the two people involved in the conflict on the day, in the dispute. So there was Alex and there was Sam. Now, I'll give you a bit of background about both of them. Alex was a very capable, dynamic, energetic, verbally capable human being. He had a lot of confidence and he was very successful. He was sort of a big personality who got things done, very efficient, very fast-paced, and very successful. And alongside him working on this project was Sam. And Sam was probably, in many respects, the antithesis of Alex, but not completely. So Sam was a beautiful, capable, intelligent human being who was very good at what he did. And he was very much respected by everybody. But his pace was a lot slower. He was much more of an introvert. He needed time to process things and to make things and to get his mind into a state to go forward. So Alex and Sam were working on a project together. Now, they had both been working for the organisation for a period of time, but they hadn't actually worked together on a project like this together before. And so this is about week 3 or 4 into this program that they were running with the kids, and it was an arts-based program. So there was one element of it was highly IT based, and the other one was less so. And the perfect storm situation was that things had already been progressing to a point where things weren't so great leading up to to that day, and as such they had had a crisis meeting in the hour prior to this workshop going ahead. And in that crisis meeting, they had come together to address a few issues because they were still grappling to get some clarity about how they were going to do some elements of the workshop and roll out this program. Excuse me. And so there was a bit of stress around how these things were going to happen. Now, I think that what really happened is that Alex had some ideas about what he thought everything should look like, and he was fairly upfront about that. And Sam felt that in that meeting that he wasn't given an opportunity to speak, that his voice wasn't heard, and he was of the view that the people above, the management team, were infatuated with Alex because he was successful, and that he had just been dismissed, like anything that he said wasn't taken seriously. So Alex thought that everything was under control because he put his side to the group, and when they left he decided that everybody had adopted his approach, and that's how things were going to go going forward. Okay, so then they go into this program to work with the kids, and Sam's working with a group of kids and they're doing some quiet work, and Alex is working with some other kids and they're doing some noisy work. The problem is that there's not a lot of space, so they're actually in the same area, but one of them is trying to do something quiet and the other one is trying to do something which is going to be noisy. And Sam was already not in a great mood because he'd come out of that crisis meeting feeling that he hadn't been respected. So he wasn't in a great mood. So what actually then pushed the whole situation over into a major dispute was that Alex then turned on some music, and the music was loud, and that was the tipping point. That was the line in the sand. He had crossed it, and Sam reacted, and so Sam went to Alex. There was an altercation in front of the kids that they were doing the workshop with, and Sam stormed off. And Sam went to up here to the CEO and the operations manager and said, "That's it, I can't take this anymore, I'm out, I'm not coming back, thanks for the memories." And Sam went home. Alex, so the operations manager and everybody then went and helped Alex, and they finished the program. No major damage was done. It was just, I think, incredibly embarrassing for them in that moment, and probably not an appropriate way to deal with the situation when you've got kids that you are supervising. So what happens next, and how do we deal with a situation where there's been a major altercation, and how do we get things back on track? So the CEO and the operations manager said to me, "We need to fix this, we need to fix it quickly because we've got this program we've got to roll out, we've got funding for it, we need to get on to this. We really need Sam to come back. We value Alex and Sam a lot, we truly value them, we don't want to lose either of them. Can you help us?" And I said, "Yes, I can help you." I said, "But the problem is that you want this fixed tomorrow, and I'm not confident that that's going to happen." And that's exactly how it played out. Alex said he was ready to have a mediation relatively quickly. Sam, on the other hand, said that he needed time to process everything that was going on. So I met with both of them individually first. So there's always a pre-mediation session that we do. And I met with both Alex and Sam at separate times and separate days. We did it in a private place away from the workplace so that nobody could sort of see what was going on or read body language or anything like that. And those processes go for at at least an hour, usually 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. And the purpose of a pre-mediation or a venting session, as I like to call them, is it gives the person an opportunity to process what has happened and to tell their story. And often in the telling of the story, they get more and more clarity about what was going on. And because I'm not there to take sides and I'm not there to be a barracker for anybody, I then start asking a few questions to help them understand that they might have in some way contributed to this, without being mean about it or without blaming anybody, but just to sort of start asking some questions about, so what do you think triggered that behaviour on that day, and what do you think so-and-so was going through when this happened? And we start exploring a whole lot of different reasons why this situation got to where it is. And it always brings up a heap of information. And quite regularly, that information goes back up the line. So often there are things that are said, that they say in a venting session, which are going to tell you that there are some other problems here. So one of the things that came out of my session with Alex is that he didn't have any respect for this team leader. He thought that he was a brilliant practitioner, but he didn't think that he was a leader. And so he had some major issues with Bob. On the other hand, he idolised the CEO. Like, he just thought that the CEO was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And that was fine. And Alex was incredibly successful. Like, he had won awards for some of the work that he'd done. He's very good at expressing himself. He was just a very energetic, capable person. The other thing that I learnt, though, that when I did this, was that Alex had enormous respect for Sam and recognised that Sam had extraordinary skills and abilities that he would never have. Like, he didn't not like Sam, but he got frustrated with Sam because Alex goes at 100 miles an hour and Sam doesn't go at 100 miles an hour and can't, because that's not what Sam does. But that didn't mean that he didn't value Sam. It was just that they had a very different approach to things. And Alex is so good at talking that he's very good at getting his own way, because sometimes he can just talk people around into doing what he wants. Sam, on the other hand, didn't have that gift of the gab, and so Sam didn't feel as respected. Now, it took a little bit longer to get to spend some time with Sam because he just wasn't ready. On the day he had, he said, "I'm out, I'm not coming back." I then spoke to him, he agreed to meet with me. He cancelled a couple of times. He said, "I'm just not ready." I said, "Fine, when you're ready, you're ready. That's fine." So I think it was probably about 2 weeks after the event that we finally met and had our debriefing session. And in that moment, I learned that Sam had enormous respect for Alex. Just thought that the work that Alex did was amazing. He won awards and all of that. But his level of frustration with Alex is that Alex didn't recognise that other people didn't work like him. And so while they were on the same page, they were trying to achieve this certain outcome for the program, he just felt like that Alex was just dominating the whole process, and he didn't feel respected in that. Sam has a really good relationship with Bob and thinks Bob's a great leader. So that had worked really well there. And Sam has a really good relationship up the line as well. So in the moment, it was really the dynamics. The main problem here was the dynamics between Alex and Sam. Now, this project had come together because some funding had arrived that really used the skills of both of these two. And it had been hoped that by putting them together, because they're a bit yin and yang, that they'd be able to create a fantastic outcome for their client group. But they hadn't done the proper due diligence before they started to make sure that they could actually work together and they could work out how they were going to manage all of the different nuances that they brought to the project. The other issue is that, apart from Sam going at a different pace, is that Alex had a belief that his job and person spec said that he was senior to Sam. And it turned out that that actually wasn't the case at all. And when I spoke to the CEO and operations manager about this, they said that the job and person specs were out of date but there was no difference in the status of them. They were both at the same level. But because Alex thought that he was senior to Sam, he would expect Sam to clean up after their workshops with the kids, and he would expect Sam to empty the rubbish bin. And I can tell you that that was a bit of a red rag to a bull for Sam. So on top of everything else, he was really feeling offended that there was an expectation that he was going to do all of the cleaning up. So that might be something that you come across in your workplace on a pretty regular basis, is who's going to do those jobs that nobody wants to do, like the cleaning up, like cleaning the kitchen, like filling the photocopier, taking the rubbish out. I can't tell you how many times I've come across disputes to do with those type of issues. So that's what happened there. Eventually we got to mediation, and it's interesting, but Alex didn't show on the first occasion that it was organised. He said it wasn't in his diary, something went wrong, he didn't turn up. So I think that Alex was a lot more nervous than he possibly was showing to the world he was. And then the second time we did get together and we had a really great session. And what's always interesting about these sessions is that if we spend enough time beforehand with the venting, the pre-mediation session, a whole lot of the work's done, because they're already starting to think about where's the other person coming from, what was triggering this moment. So the mediation went really, really well, and as a result of that, they did recognise that one, they were actually on the same level. Two, they did genuinely like and respect each other, but they worked out that they needed a new way of working together that would accommodate the way in which they both worked, because they did work in completely different ways. And that worked really well for the kids, because the kids had different needs depending on what they were doing. So, but they hadn't worked out how to make that work really well. So that was an issue. And then they raised just some other issues that came up along the way. And one of the things that came out of this whole thing was that the CEO was now working on a part-time basis, and they had moved their drinks session. So they used to have a Friday night drinks for all the staff, and it used to be a bit of a blue sky session. It used to end up being like, if we had this money, what would we do? And it was a lot of fun, and people really enjoyed that and loved it. And what happened was that the CEO, due to a number of different things that were happening in their life, had to stop coming to those sessions because they were no longer available on a Friday night. And that had had a really big impact on the entire organisation, because they held in such high esteem. And so when I worked back with the operations, when I worked back with the team leader, the operations manager and the CEO, it was highlighted that one of the issues was that this group got a lot of value out of spending time together on a Friday night blue sky, and they needed to find out some way to make that work again so that the CEO could be there. There was also a number of other issues raised. It was an organisation where they're under enormous pressure all the time. There's a lot of stress. There was a lot of financial stress about funding and all of those type of things. Their client group were not easy, and there was a lot of stress. And we had the issue of Alex not having a great deal of respect for Bob. And there were just a number of issues that came up during the mediation that really went to, how can we just make this work better? And I always think that there's a lot of wisdom in a room when you put a number of different heads together. So what I did was I held a meeting, facilitated a meeting between all of them. And so I got everybody together. I had a one-on-one with Bob first, just to sort of see how he was feeling, because of the relationship with Alex being strained. And he was okay. He was a confident, capable person, and he was okay. But then I got all of them together in a room. And before we met, I got them to answer some questions in writing. So I gave them some questions, like an hour before, for them to write down their thoughts about particular different issues that we needed to discuss. And I did that because one of the issues that Sam had was that Alex always dominated the conversation, that he was so capable at speaking that he ended up taking a lot of the airspace when they had a meeting. So I wanted to give everybody an equal voice. So I asked them questions in writing, and then at one it meant that they owned what they'd written, and there wasn't one person dominating the conversation, but moreover there wasn't just groupthink happening, that if one person says that, we're all going to follow it. So we did that. But what was really interesting that when we did that was that Alex felt really uncomfortable about writing things down, because he actually struggled with putting things into writing. I think he might have been a little bit dyslexic, and it's one of those things that was a big learning lesson for me back in the day. But it was important to ensure that in this instance we were giving everybody equal time and an opportunity to say what they thought so that we could hear it. So we did do that process, and what we learnt was that there was just so much love and respect for the organisation as a whole, and leadership. We just needed to work out some policies and processes to make the operation work better and more effectively, and use the skills of the individuals better. Alex goes 100 miles an hour and Sam doesn't. It doesn't mean that they can't work together, and it doesn't mean they're not both valuable. They just do it differently. So how can we use that to make sure that we get the best out of both of them for the organisation? So those were the things that we worked out. And we also looked at how did we deal with people in the group that were difficult, and how we were going to manage that when we had small teams supervising a group of, sometimes really difficult to work with clients and the like. It was a really great session, and it went a long way for them then consolidating their beliefs and their policies and procedures, and then they went back and they updated everybody's job and person spec, and it just created a new way of thinking about how they were going to problem solve going forward. So in the long run, we didn't lose anybody. As a result of this process, Alex and Sam's relationship was actually not only restored but enhanced, and so they worked together a whole lot better going forward. They did have behaviours that did trigger each other from time to time, and so we came up with a little ritual that if they felt that the person was behaving in a manner that was unintentionally upsetting the other person, that they would say a key word, and that they might, as a result of being triggered, just say the key word and say, have you got it? And they might leave the room for 5 minutes so they could process their thoughts and to come back again, because they both needed to really be on and be capable in the moment to deal with their client group. But we came up with a strategy, and I truly believe this, but once you've had these conversations and you've dealt with some of the hard stuff, you can't unforget what you've discussed. And so these situations rarely happen again, because you've dealt with it and you know where the other person's coming from, and you can have a conversation next time that you feel triggered or something happens that you think's unfair, because you've got that relationship. It's starting the conversation that's always so difficult. So they went on and the program went really well. Bob was now in a better place with Alex, because as a result of the group meeting, we'd been able to address some of the issues that Alex had about the way in which the team was managed, and when we had that meeting, Bob was supported because he had the CEO and the operations manager there. So it wasn't like everybody was ganging up on Alex. It was like, how do we as a group make this work better, and what's going to work and what's not going to work. It was never intended to be a ganging up, and at no stage did anybody feel like that. And the CEO then worked out that they needed to change their life again to be available on Friday nights for Friday night drinks, because it was so crucial to the well-being of the staff to have some downtime at the end of the week, to just be creative and to blue sky and to problem solve and listen to each other's week and find out what was going on. So that is what happened in that scenario. And the really lovely thing is that when we start having the conversations, when we start exploring what triggers a conflict, what is really going on, what's happening, that we can address it. And if we just look at it as something factual, like this is the problem and how do we fix it, rather than you made me feel like this or blaming and all of that. We just get a different outcome. We need to move away from some of the emotion and then just look at the facts. We don't dismiss the emotion. The emotion is really important to that person at that time. But we need to diffuse the emotion so that we can actually deal with the issue at hand so that everybody can move on. So it worked really well. And the other thing too is that when I do work with teams, when I do go to a mediation for a workplace, is that I always work with management, and I always say to management, there's likely to be some information that comes out of our mediation which directly relates back to management. And are you ready to hear that? Do you want to hear that information? Because it's really important that if we're going to make this a long-term fix, we have to address all of the problems and not just the relationship problems between these two, because the relationship problem here has been triggered by things happening elsewhere. So that's my story about my dear, very early in the day mediation that I did many moons ago. Really not much has changed. If you look after people, you get better outcomes every single time. There's just no doubt about it. Management unintentionally often trigger conflict. They don't mean to. It's not blaming, but there's just sometimes the things that are happening that impact on the parties involved and can exacerbate a conflict. In this case, there was a lack of clarity about roles and responsibilities. There was a lack of clarity about how the program was going to run. There was a sense that Alex was special and getting special treatment because he'd won awards, and so Sam didn't feel like his work was valued to the same degree. And then you've got Alex thinking that he's the boss of Sam and treating him like that when in fact they were on the same level. So there's a whole heap of things, and most of that went back up here. And these guys were just so busy dealing with all the other issues on a day-by-day basis that they just didn't recognise how in that moment they were contributing towards this situation. But they were very open to finding ways to remedy that so that both Alex and Sam would continue to work there and run the program because they valued both of them and they wanted both of them there. All right, well that's it for me. I will see you next Monday. If you've got any questions, if you're wanting to know more about the work that I do, please contact me. I'm happy to work with you. I work with the leaders and their teams, but I'm also just about to roll out a program called Teams That Thrive, which is an online program which is working with anybody who might have a leadership role, and it could be, it could be a team leader role, it could be a CEO, it could be manager, it could be anybody, even if you're just supervising one other person. So look for that. There will be some more information available for that about that coming out very, very soon. All right, well, have a lovely rest of your Australia Day long weekend. In Adelaide, the weather is absolutely stunning, and I'll see you next time. Bye.